Well, hello everybody. We're here at the Old Vic Theatre, and as you can probably see, this isn't Nathan.
It's not.
We've got a very special guest legger, writer, actor, director, and star of a web series, Pickle, which you can find on YouTube. Do check that out. The one and only Shaun Nolan. So thank you for joining us, Shaun.
Oh my God, my biggest fan.
I know. We timed that especially.
We did. That was an extra we'd already hired.
And what are we here to see?
We are here to see Wise Children.
Wise Children.
Emma Rice's Wise Children.
It is. So
Emma Rice's Wise Children's production of Wise Children.
That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? So stay tuned to find out how many legs and whether it's break a leg or
leg it.
Yes. Wise Children, I hear you scream, what's that? Well, apparently it's based on a novel. It's an adaptation of an Angela Carter novel, which has been directed and adapted by previous Globe artistic director Emma Rice, who was unceremoniously stripped of her artistic directorship over at the Globe last year, but she's back with this show, and she's also started her own production company, and just so you don't get confused, that's also called
Wise Children.
Wise Children. So a little bit confusing, but also you've only got to remember one thing, and that's all.
Just an next show, then you have to remember more. For now,
do you think when she has her next show, she'll just
changes.
rename her production company
idea.
over and over again, and everyone's only got to remember it once? Other Emma Rice shows, what have you seen of hers?
I Midsummer Night's Dream at the Globe, which was 2 years ago now. I think a couple of years ago at least.
And did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. Full stop, end of sentence.
Nothing more to say.
Enjoyed it.
It was an evening out.
And then they actually adapted it. Well, didn't adapt it. They filmed it and then put it on the BBC actually, and I rewatched it on the BBC.
Oh really? So it was good enough for you to want to see again?
If I don't love things, I tend to see them twice, which
That's
I know sounds
interesting.
ridiculous. I'm more likely to see something I half liked twice because I want to love it.
Do you think it's because I often worry, especially when you see something you don't like and everyone else is raving about it, that you've missed something? Like, did I miss something the first time round?
It's actually, well, I used to think miss something. This is an anecdote. I used to hate Pinter, right? I've said this online before.
Yes.
I used to hate Pinter. And then I saw The Birthday Party, which was revived here April kind of time.
With Zoe Wanamaker.
Yeah, which is my least favourite Pinter play. Maybe one of my least favourite plays of all time. But I was adamant I'd watch it. And then I sat next to somebody and I said to them halfway through, you know, I just don't think I get Pinter. And the man said to me, you do get it, you just hate it. And ever since then, I've never thought I haven't got something. I just want to like it more.
And another complete tangent, I think that's the beauty of a good director. Like, they often don't get the credit they need because sort of understanding the text is 90% of the
100%,
work.
100%.
100% of the work.
100%.
Forget the actors. Just as director.
I meant 100%. I agree. But the same way, 100%.
It's quite funny that you could think a director just, as long as they understand the work, go, I understood what they meant there, and it just walks away. They've done their job. Like, that's that'd be quite a fun thing. But yes, do you know what? Should we talk about this again?
Talk what again?
Oh, we're here to see Wise Children.
Oh, we are, aren't we?
Did you know?
Sorry, I was just thinking about Pinter now.
So yeah, adapted from a novel by Angela Carter. I don't know the book. Do you know the book?
No, neither of us know the book. Neither of us know any of the works by Angela Carter.
And it's
rip into us in the comments. I'm gonna do that.
Please do. And it's really important that we say we're actually seeing the very first dress run tonight of this show.
Have you seen a dress run before?
Not of a professional production.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So things could change between now and opening night massively.
The last dress run I saw was Heather's.
Okay.
And then I saw the first preview that evening. It's a very different beast. But I don't know if that's because they did their dress rehearsal the same day as their first preview, so they were reserving themselves for the evening performance, or whether or not. But of course all dress rehearsals are different, so it depends on what this experience is like. Yeah. It's an exciting experience because everybody in the audience is willing it to succeed. So actually it's quite it's a bit like an opening night atmosphere in that everyone really is willing it to do well, so therefore you have this really nice energy in the audience. So I think it should make it better.
Even if it's crap, we're going to have an experience. We're going to have something memorable.
We are.
Do you know what? We're part of a journey.
I'll go with it.
Isn't that exciting? The show is 2 hours and 40 with a 20-minute interval, so we will be getting back together for a 30-second interval breakdown, and then stay tuned for the end, and then we'll tell you how many stars we're going to give it. We've come to the interval of Wise Children, which means it's time for the Break-a-Leggers 30-second interval breakdown. Go! What do you think so far? You're the guest.
I think it is really great. I think that I'm into it more at some points than I am at others. But for some reason, I'm kind of enjoying only half listening at times. It's kind of comfortable for my brain to zone in and out of. and I'm having fun with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a visual feast, and I think that's why you don't have to be so engrossed in the plot.
Yeah.
It's being told through movement, through music, and it's just a really lovely, interesting show. I think Emma Rice is spreading her wings here, and I think she's had the freedom to do so, and it really shows. I can't wait to get back. That's the end of Wise Children. So I suppose the falls to you really as a guest Legger to ask, were you satisfied?
Was I satisfied? What a question. Was I satisfied? In comparison to when I went in,
yes.
I didn't really give many of my pre-reserved opinions before we went in. I only thought about them really as the show started, and I didn't necessarily have high expectations. I didn't think I'd enjoy it. It didn't ring as the kind of thing to me that I'd enjoy.
Okay.
Not necessarily to say it would be bad, I just thought it wasn't my cup of tea. I enjoyed it a lot more than I anticipated I would, actually. So I'd say by the end, yes, I probably was satisfied, because I think I had a better time than I thought I would.
I mean, you were talking before we went in off camera about Emma Rice being all over it,
yes.
or over whatever she does. Is she all over this?
Yes, and I like it.
Okay.
It works for me now. At the Globe, so we've had lots of discussions about the Globe and how that's working for us and what we thought of her at the time there.
Yes.
I think at the Globe, the thing that you want all over it, for me anyway, was the Globe. It's Shakespeare focused, not necessarily director focused. And it's probably exactly why I couldn't mention or reference any other directors of Globe shows I've seen, because in my head, it's Shakespeare first, because it's a Shakespeare venue. Apart from, I suppose, if you see a new play there, but I've never seen a new play there, I've only ever seen Shakespeare. Whereas here, I'm happy for it to be Emma Rice led, because Emma Rice is the focal point of Wise Children. It's her company, and I kind of came along because I think it's actually. I'm turning around. It says over there. I think they end up saying, you know, Emma. It's brand as being Emma Rice's Wise Children. It's supposed to be her as a staple, and I like that she's a staple of it as a result.
To be honest with you, what happened to her at the Globe could ultimately be the making of her.
Oh, 100%.
You know, it could ultimately be the thing that's made her realise who she is and what she does and what she's good at.
And what she wants to do.
And what she wants to do. And I think what she's good at is drawing on a lot of different mediums in order to tell a story.
100%.
In musicality, and in this production, music it's almost a play with music. It's not a musical. It's very much a play with music. The song choices are inspired, and the way that they are played here, it's a very small orchestra on stage. Very small
band, but even
band.
call them an orchestra.
Three people.
3 or 4.
But the styles of music that they managed to pull out of their setup is amazing. Like, I think that's a real star of the show here. Also the movement and use of puppetry and just things that unfortunately would never have sat well in a Shakespeare work here to its advantage and to the audience's advantage, because we're told a story using all those different methods that make a storytelling experience vibrant and alive.
In a very nice way. I think that it's a collaboration of all of her senses, all of the things that I feel like I'd naturally beforehand would associate with Emma Rice. This use of small bands and music that she's done in things like knee-high, projection, puppetry, this kind of campy, meta theatre-telling style that she ends up doing. It was very Emma Rice, and I think for a show that is the namesake of her new company and is launching her new company, I think it puts her in good stead. I feel like, especially from my perspective, I've come and seen this play now, as I said before this even started, as a not an Emma Rice fan. I wasn't a fan, I just wasn't really that fussed. Whereas now I've come away and thought the next thing she does, I would genuinely be interested in going to see it again.
That's almost a 180, like it's almost.
It is a 180 in a way. I'm much more into it now. I think it was good that she gave a flavour really of her flair, and I wouldn't say it all rings true for me. I wouldn't say I like all of it. Some of it I find a bit forced and, in a funny way, cliche, but she's not running the cliche, like as if other people have done it enough that she looks like the original and other people have been doing it. So I feel like things like some of the puppetry, I see puppetry everywhere now. And sometimes puppetry doesn't ring the best with me, and sometimes that inclusion of music in plays, it's not original music, by the way. It's
songs that you know.
Songs from like the 80s and
and even
things
some sort of, I almost felt you know, Shakespeare songs in there. There's songs from Shakespeare's plays that are set to music here in different arrangements, but that it fits the piece really well. I mean, we haven't even touched at all on plot or storyline.
No,
and storyline is it's the telling of two women's lives,
two sisters, twin sisters,
who go through. They have a very theatrical life anyway, so perfect to put on stage in this show. And sort of the influences they've had in their lives, whether it be father figures or other strong women. And I did feel a sort of a feminism about it.
Yeah.
About empowerment and them living their own lives and making their own decisions. It's highly sexual, which surprised me quite a bit, you know, for something as tamely entitled as Wise Children. I don't think I expected the adultness of it all.
It's funny you say sexual. I wouldn't even necessarily call it sexual. I would say it's got a lot of sex-based moments.
Yes.
But I would never say that it heightens to sexual for the sake of playing off a sex moment. Do you know what I mean? I feel like the sex was all very much in imperative to the story, really. It had to happen to show this the growing from no longer being children to becoming wise children, and I feel like all of it was very tasteful and also done in a very artistic way. I mean,
it was
done in its
acrobatic at moments.
Yes,
the sex.
that's the best way of saying it. Yeah.
But what I did like, apart from one pivotal plot point which we won't go on about, a lot of the sex was woman-led.
Yeah.
And I think in the age of sort of slut shaming, where women aren't allowed to exhibit their sexuality, or at least they're sort of berated for that, I think that was quite a really bold moment.
And in a way, it almost showed, in its contrast, because it's narrated by the women and you go through their kind of younger lives. In a way, because it's narrated by the older women, it felt like older women having a sexual prowess as well.
Yeah.
Because they weren't in any way shying away from their sexual history when they were talking about it and exhibiting it in the future. It kind of felt
and
very
I've not seen that
exciting.
before, really.
No, not really.
No, it's really interesting. Let's go on to the people playing these parts. Let's go on to the cast. Now, gender is been totally tossed aside for this production. Something Emma Rice has been championing in what I've seen her blogging about, and there's a podcast, a Wise Children podcast, which I suggest that you give a listen to, and that is casting men in female roles and not drawing attention to that. And I think that's done really well. In the case of showgirl Nora, played by Amari Douglas, there was just a real femininity about him which never bordered into drag, which I found really, really interesting. By contrast, another performer that plays plays Dora and Nora. I'm already confused by the fact that the production company and show have got the same name. Now I've got like rhyming blooming twins. Gareth Snook as older Dora. It's really interesting that they're very self-aware in this play. There's no fourth wall, is there?
No.
And they're talking out to the audience.
It's staged almost like a vaudeville act, which is kind of what it's based. It is supposed to be their lives as a vaudeville act almost, and it's told as a vaudeville act. How
did you feel about the fact that right from the get-go we're almost circus? It was almost like a circus. And you know what it put me in mind of, actually? It put me a little bit in mind of when the players rock up in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, like to put on a show, but then that sort of becomes integral to the plot. And
it was very much entwined with itself, because that was kind of what the story was telling, was this kind of age of players and things. I think the one thing this has that does really well is that it really knows what it's doing.
Yes.
And it's very good at staying very consistent to its theme and its ideas, and it never really breaks away from that in a very good way. There's loads of different ideas, as we said, puppetry and music, and this campy style to it, and also this kind of inclusivity of the whole piece. And it really embraces all of that and knows where it's going. And I think that's obviously great credit to Emma Rice for really having a strong vision for this story, which isn't necessarily the most compelling of stories. As I said in the interval, I wasn't necessarily constantly compelled by the tale. It's not the most...
Just enough to keep you interested.
Yeah, enough to keep you interested, but it's obviously not full of like great melodrama.
It helps hugely that parts of it are set in the Old Vic.
Yeah, they obviously tailored it to be that. I wonder if in future productions it will be tailored to their theatre.
Because it is touring, it is going to the Coventry Belgrade, it's going to the Bristol Old Vic, and it's a co-pro between all three. But I thought that was really well as a knowing little nod and a little wink to where we were. It's a London story, which isn't going to change. It's sort of set north of the river and south of the river. And something that was interesting was played on was about class and placement within society, whether you are south of the river or north of the river. And I really enjoyed that use of a division there, so the river have actually been a barrier between those classes and between the expectations of you. Someone else I wanted to mention was the grandma, played by Katie Owen. She was a bastard love child for me between Mrs. Wormwood and Catherine Tate's grandma. Like, literally, if those two had got together and somehow conceived, it would be that character. But believable as a Brixton sort of, like, a bit rough around the edges sort of girl. What did you think of her?
I really liked her. I think I said to you in the interval that she reminded me of Mrs. Wormwood meets Mama Rose.
Mama Rose,
That's exactly
yes.
who she made me think of, and I'm sure those influences felt so laid on thick that I feel like they were definitely intentional. And I really liked her. I thought she was a good comic relief, really, to the piece, because the sisters are obviously very similar. They're supposed to be slightly different, but they are naturally similar, very similar twins. That's kind of the point of their existence. And she kind of added this edge to it, and I think she did a very good job, the character, of diffusing, kind of getting too carried away with the theatricality, because sometimes it becomes so whimsical and fantastical, as you said, that it can get a little bit cringy. Because I think, in a way, it feels a bit like the theatrical equivalent of when you see those kind of animated adult films. You know, you get like those, it's like an adult kids show.
Yeah.
Because at the first I was like, oh, maybe this is a kids show, and then of course it gets a little bit inappropriate. So you're like, oh, this isn't a kids show.
Pretty quickly,
but
it goes,
I think that kind
rather
of
risque.
That kind of style works well for it, and I think she really added that kind of cut it down.
A couple of other shout outs I want to give are whoever did the orchestrations, because they are music. It is music in the way, it's songs that you know, but they are presented
I believe it's
so
Ian
differently.
Ross.
Ian Ross, the composer, and the scoring throughout I thought was beautiful. Music does a massive amount to drive a show, and I thought they were very aware that they needed that, and it worked really, really well. Lighting. I thought lighting was beautiful too.
Malcolm Rippeth.
Malcolm, well done, mate. Loved your bit of lighting there, I did. Anything else particular with regards to production that you thought really stood out? Costume.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
I thought that worked for itself. I thought, again, it was all very in keeping with its own theme. So I
Yeah.
thought it was a very well brought together piece. The only thing I have to question about set, that I'm not sure what I thought about it by the end. On the stage above them, they have in bulbs Wise Children.
Yes.
Which is either the show title or the company name, which hilariously, no idea which
Yeah.
one it is. I don't know how I feel about having it there all the time. You know what it made me think of? It brought me out of it every time I saw it, in the same way when you watch things on ITV and then you see the ITV logo and you kind of fall out of it. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it kept made me think of, in that I kind of saw it and I remembered I was watching a show, but maybe that's exactly the point.
Maybe.
Because you're supposed to then be like, I'm watching a show, this isn't real. But that's what it kept bringing me
I've
out.
got to say, I tried to find purpose for it throughout, and the only time I did find purpose was as a party scene, and the only letters that were illuminated spelled the word wild.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I was
but then
like,
another time I saw WIIL, and I thought, what's that supposed to mean?
Well, let's round it up then and talk about how many stars we are going to give for Wise Children. We need to acknowledge the fact that this is a dress run, so there's still room to grow. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So, for Wise Children, we are going to give...
3 stars!
What? Okay.
It's a differing opinion,
Yeah,
everyone.
we need to have a discussion about this. So for me, I can totally see the potential in it. At the moment, I would agree it's a solid 3, but with a little bit of fine tuning, with a little bit of trimming, and with an audience reaction, so those creatives can... Lost focus, here. So those creatives can sort of work out what is working and what isn't working. I think it will be a 4, and I'm judging it on its potential. But you?
As we were saying before, in my head, I don't think the piece could ever attain a 5 for me. I just think, for the starters, as I said, it's very long, and it drags at times. It's not. It feels over. It doesn't have enough in it to sustain it for a long running time. It's not like it's like 2 hours and I'm like, oh, it's a bit long. It is a long play for 2 hours 40.
Yeah.
And I think it could be cut down by a good half an hour. And for me, that does do a lot. And I don't think they will ever be able to make it tight enough to warrant it to be this very slick 5 stars.
Are you telling us you'd like it tighter?
I'd love it. Love it. But I think that, as you said, when it has improvements and it maybe works out what it's doing a bit more, it doesn't even necessarily feel that off. I think it doesn't have actually that much more to do with it. To me, it just needs to be shorter, and a lot of it there didn't need to be there. Then I think it will be able to get nearer to the 4 for me, but I don't think it will ever be... I think about things that I think are 5 stars, and to me it will never be on that level. It just won't work like that for me. But I think it could definitely get to 4. But for now, it's a solid 3, which is not a bad thing. In my head, a 3 is still a good piece of theatre, and it's definitely very enjoyable. And as I said, I'll happily see MRI's pieces again as a result of this. But for me, there were just times, especially in the second act, where I was sat there thinking, oh, come on now. Obviously, as we said, this is just the dress run, which was very slick.
Yeah,
incredibly
very slick. Well done, everybody.
It played like a first preview, which was amazing. It just needs that tightening for me, and it'll work. But otherwise, the material, the story, cast, costume, everything was brilliant. For me, it was just pacing and length.
But you know what? That's just what we think.
That is just what we think.
What do you guys think? Have you seen this? Are you planning on seeing it? Let us know down in the comments. We would love to hear from you.
I'll be on the prowl. I always am on the prowl.
He is. Just look out for his comments too, and do follow Shaun. He's got so many fingers in so many pies.
For want of a better term.
But yeah, for want of a much better term. But honestly, some interesting stuff from you. So you keep us entertained as well. We're the Breaker Leggers. At least you are for the night. And we'll see you again soon. Bye!